Hello, my friend. Before we begin today, I don't want to ask you a complicated question. Just something simple. Something honest. Have you ever stood in front of a decision and felt your heart beating a little faster than usual? Not because it was dangerous, not because it was impossible, but because, deep down, you knew. This one choice might change everything. Maybe you walked away from it. Maybe you told yourself, not now. Or maybe you're still thinking about it today. I want to tell you a story. Not about success, not at first, but about hesitation, fear, and one small risk. That didn't look important at the time. This story is not loud. It doesn't begin with confidence. It begins with doubt, the kind that whispers quietly inside you. Because sometimes, the biggest turning point in your life doesn't come from a perfect plan. It comes from a moment when you almost say no. But something inside you says, try. And today, I want to take you into that moment. The moment that changed my life. Part 1. The life that felt safe, but empty. For a long time, my life looked completely fine from the outside. I had a routine. I had a job. I had people around me who believed I was doing okay. Every morning, I woke up at the same time. I followed the same schedule. I said the same polite words to the same familiar faces. Nothing was wrong. And yet, something didn't feel right. It's hard to explain that feeling, because it's not pain, it's not failure. It's something quieter than that. It's the feeling of being stuck, without anything actually stopping you. I remember sitting at my desk one afternoon, staring at the screen, pretending to work, but my mind was somewhere else. I kept asking myself a question I didn't want to answer. Is this it? Not in a dramatic way. Not like I hated my life, but in a quiet, honest way. Is this all my life is going to be? Days turning into weeks. Weeks turning into years. Doing things I was good at, but not things I truly cared about. And the strange part is, no one could see it, because on the surface, everything looked stable. That's the dangerous part about comfort. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't scare you. It slowly convinces you to stay exactly where you are. I told myself I should be grateful, and I was. But gratitude and fulfillment are not the same thing. At night, when everything was quiet, that feeling came back. A small voice, not loud enough to disturb my life, but strong enough to follow me everywhere. You could be doing more. Not more for money, not more for success. Just more of something that felt real. But every time that voice appeared, another voice quickly followed. Don't risk it. What if you fail? What if you lose what you already have? And just like that, the moment passed, again and again, until one day, something different happened. Not a big event, not a dramatic opportunity, just a small moment that most people would ignore. But for some reason, I didn't. And that's where everything began to change. Part 2. The opportunity I almost ignored. It didn't arrive with excitement. There was no perfect timing, no clear sign, no moment that made me feel ready. In fact, if I'm being honest, it came at a time when I was tired. Just another ordinary day. Nothing special. I was scrolling through my phone, half paying attention, half trying to escape the boredom. That had quietly become part of my life. And then I saw it. A small opportunity. Not impressive. Not life-changing. At least not on the surface. It was something simple. Something most people would probably skip without thinking twice. And to be honest, that was my first reaction too. Not worth it. It's too small. It won't make a difference. I almost moved on. But something stopped me. Not a loud voice, not a strong feeling, just a quiet pause. The kind of pause that feels almost uncomfortable. So I looked at it again. This time, a little more carefully. And suddenly, it didn't look the same anymore. It wasn't about how big the opportunity was. It was about what it represented. A chance to step out of my routine. A chance to do something different. A chance to prove, to myself, that I wasn't stuck. But immediately, the fear showed up. Fast, automatic, familiar. What if this is a waste of time? What if you're not good enough? What if you try and nothing happens? And then came the most dangerous thought of all. Maybe later. That sentence has stopped more dreams than failure ever will. Because later feels safe. It doesn't force you to decide. It doesn't force you to act. It lets you stay exactly where you are, without feeling like you gave up. I sat there holding my phone, staring at something that seemed so small, but felt strangely important. Minutes passed. Nothing changed, except one thing. This time, I didn't look away. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to imagine something different. Not success, not a perfect outcome, just a different path. And that's when I realized something. The risk wasn't in doing it. The real risk was staying the same. My heart started beating a little faster, not because I was confident, but because I wasn't. And somehow, that made the moment feel real. I took a deep breath. No plan, no certainty. Just a decision that felt slightly uncomfortable. And I said yes. A small yes. A quiet yes. But a yes. That would change everything. Part 3. The doubt that followed me. The moment after I said yes was not exciting. There was no sudden burst of motivation, no clear direction, no feeling that I had just made a smart decision. Instead, there was silence. And then, the doubt arrived. Slow at first, then stronger. What did you just do? I tried to ignore it. I told myself, it's fine, just start. But starting was harder than I expected, because now it was real. Before that moment, everything had been just a thought, a possibility, something I could imagine without consequences. But now, I had taken a step, and that step came with pressure. I remember sitting down, trying to focus, trying to take action. But my mind kept interrupting me. You're not ready. You don't know enough. This was a mistake. It's strange how quickly confidence disappears when you move outside your comfort zone. Just a few hours earlier, I was someone with control. Now, I felt like a beginner again. And being a beginner is uncomfortable. You make slow progress. You make obvious mistakes. You question everything, even the decision itself. There was a moment, I remember it clearly, when I almost stopped. I told myself, you can still go back. No one will know. You can pretend this never happened. And honestly, that option felt very attractive, because going back meant safety, no risk, no embarrassment, no failure, just the same familiar life I already knew. But something inside me resisted, not strongly, not confidently, just enough to make me pause again. I realized something important in that moment. If I stopped now, I wouldn't just lose this opportunity. I would lose trust in myself. The next time I faced a decision, I would remember this moment, and I would hesitate even more. So I stayed. Not because I believed I would succeed, but because I didn't want to become the person who always walks away. And that decision, to continue, even without confidence, was harder than saying yes in the first place. The fear didn't disappear. The doubt didn't fade. But I kept going anyway, one small action at a time. Slow, uncertain, imperfect. And even though nothing looked impressive, something inside me was starting to change. Not my skills, not my results, but my mindset. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the perfect moment anymore. I was moving, even when it felt uncomfortable. And that was the real beginning. Part 4. The small wins no one could see. At first, nothing changed on the outside. My life still looked the same. Same routine, same environment, same people around me. If someone had looked at my life during that time, they would have seen absolutely nothing different. And yet, inside, something was shifting, very slowly. So slowly that even I almost didn't notice it. The progress wasn't obvious. There were no big results, no sudden breakthroughs, no moments that made me feel proud, just small actions, almost invisible. I would spend a little time each day, trying, failing, adjusting, trying again. Sometimes I made progress. Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I felt like I was improving. And sometimes I felt completely lost. But something interesting started to happen. The things that once felt difficult began to feel a little more familiar. Not easy, but less intimidating. And that small difference changed everything. Because when something feels slightly less scary, you're more willing to try again. I remember one moment in particular. It wasn't a big achievement. In fact, most people wouldn't even call it progress. But to me, it felt different. For the first time, I didn't hesitate before taking action. There was no long internal debate, no overthinking. I just did it. And after that moment, I sat there quietly, realizing what had just happened. It wasn't about what I had done. It was about how I had done it, without fear controlling me. That was new. That was powerful. And that's when I understood something that no one had ever explained to me clearly. Confidence doesn't come first. Action comes first. Confidence is built afterward. All this time, I had been waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel sure, waiting to feel capable. But those feelings never arrive on their own. They are created, slowly, quietly, through repetition, through showing up, even when it feels pointless. And most of the time, it does feel pointless. That's why so many people stop, because the early progress is almost invisible. No rewards, no recognition, no clear signs that you're on the right path, just effort and uncertainty. But if you stay long enough, something begins to grow. Not success, not yet, but belief. A small, fragile belief that maybe, just maybe, you are capable of more than you thought. And once that belief appears, even in the smallest form, you start to see things differently. Opportunities don't feel as distant. Challenges don't feel as impossible. And the person you used to be, the one who hesitated, the one who avoided risk, starts to fade, not completely, but enough to make room for someone new. And the most surprising part is, no one else notices this change. They still see the same you. But you know, something is different now. Part 5. When something finally worked. And then, something finally happened. Not something big. Not something that would impress anyone. But something real. Something undeniable. For the first time, my effort created a result. I remember staring at it, not quite believing what I was seeing. I checked it again, and again, just to be sure it wasn't luck, just to be sure it wasn't a mistake. But it was there. A small sign that what I was doing actually worked. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not excitement, not pride, relief. A quiet, deep relief. Because for so long I had been moving forward, without knowing if any of it mattered, without knowing if I was just wasting time. But now, there was proof. Small, but powerful. And for a brief moment, everything felt lighter. The doubt didn't disappear completely, but it became quieter. The fear didn't vanish, but it stepped back. And in its place, something new appeared. Possibility. For the first time, I allowed myself to think, what if this could actually go somewhere? Not a big dream, not a perfect future, just a direction. But strangely, that's when a new kind of fear began. Because now it wasn't just about trying anymore. Now, there was something to lose. Before, failure didn't matter, because nothing had started. Now, failure meant losing progress, losing proof, losing momentum. And that made everything feel heavier. I became more careful, more aware, more afraid of making mistakes. It's a strange shift. At the beginning, fear stops you from starting. But later, fear tries to stop you from growing. I caught myself overthinking again. Don't mess this up. What if this was just luck? What if you can't do it again? And for a moment, I felt stuck in a different way. Not stuck in comfort anymore, but stuck in pressure. That's when I realized something important. Every level of growth comes with a new version of fear. It never fully disappears. It just changes its shape. And if you don't understand that, you might think something is wrong. You might think, I felt better before, maybe I should go back. But going back was no longer an option. Because now I had seen something, a glimpse of what was possible. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So I made another decision. Not a big one, not dramatic, but necessary. I decided to keep going. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, but honestly. To accept that fear would be there. To accept that doubt would return. And to move forward anyway. Because this time, I wasn't just chasing change. I was protecting it. Part 6. The moment I almost quit. For a while, things continued to move forward. Slowly, but steadily. I was learning. I was improving. I was beginning to believe that maybe this path could actually lead somewhere. And then Everything stopped. Not gradually, not gently, suddenly. Something went wrong. A mistake, a setback, a moment I didn't expect. And just like that, the progress I had worked so hard for felt like it disappeared. I remember sitting there, staring at what had happened, feeling a heavy silence around me. No motivation, no clarity, just one overwhelming thought. Maybe this is where it ends. All the old doubts came back, stronger than before. This was never meant for you. You got lucky once. You should have stayed where it was safe. It's strange how quickly your mind can turn against you. Just days before, I had started to believe in myself. Now, I was questioning everything again. Every decision, every step, every moment that led me here. And this time, quitting didn't feel like failure. It felt reasonable, logical, even smart, because continuing meant risk, more mistakes, more uncertainty. But stopping meant relief. No more pressure, no more fear, just a return to the life I already knew. I sat there for a long time, thinking about it, going back and forth in my mind. Part of me wanted to continue, but a bigger part of me just wanted peace. And honestly, I almost chose to quit. Not dramatically, not with a big decision, just quietly. The kind of quitting that happens when you stop trying, when you tell yourself, I'll come back later. But deep down, you know you won't. And right at that moment, something shifted, not outside, inside. A question appeared in my mind, simple, but impossible to ignore. If you quit now, what was all of this for? Not the time, not the effort, but the change. The person I had started to become. The courage I had slowly built. The belief that had taken so long to grow. Was I really ready to give that up? I realized something uncomfortable. If I walked away now, I wouldn't just lose progress. I would confirm every fear. That tried to stop me in the beginning. I would prove that I wasn't capable. And that thought hurt more than failure. So I stayed. Not because I felt strong, not because I had a solution, but because I couldn't accept going back to who I used to be. I took a deep breath. And instead of trying to fix everything, I did something much smaller. I took one step. Just one. No confidence, no guarantee. Just a quiet decision. To not give up today. And somehow, that was enough. Because sometimes, the biggest turning point in your life is not when you succeed. It's when you refuse to quit at your lowest point. That moment didn't make me stronger instantly, but it did something more important. It made me continue. And that changed everything that came next. Part 7. The life that quietly changed. After that moment, things didn't suddenly become perfect. There was no dramatic transformation, no instant success, no moment where everything finally made sense. But something had changed. And this time, it wasn't temporary. It stayed. I continued to move forward, step by step, day by day, still imperfect, still uncertain, but different, because now I trusted myself a little more, not completely, but enough. Enough to try again, enough to keep going, enough to not walk away when things became difficult. And slowly, the results started to grow, not in a way that others would notice immediately, but in a way that I could feel. Things that once felt impossible became manageable. Things that once scared me became challenges I was willing to face. And one day, I paused, not because I was stuck, but because I realized something. I was no longer the same person, not on the outside. If someone looked at my life, they might still see something ordinary. But inside, everything was different. The way I thought, the way I made decisions, the way I responded to fear, that had changed. And it all traced back to that one small risk, that moment when I could have said no, that moment when I almost walked away, that moment. That didn't look important at all. I used to believe that big changes required big actions, that life only shifts when something dramatic happens. But now I understand something much deeper. Your life can change because of a decision that no one else even notices. A quiet yes, a small step, an uncomfortable choice. And over time, those small decisions reshape who you are, not overnight, but permanently. Looking back now, I don't see that moment as brave. I don't see it as special. I see it as necessary. Because without it, I would still be in the same place, thinking the same thoughts, living the same days, telling myself the same excuses. And the truth is that life would have felt safe, but empty. That's the part people don't talk about enough. The cost of not taking risks is not failure. It's regret. A quiet, lasting regret. That follows you over time, not loudly, not dramatically, but persistently. And once I understood that, everything became clearer. The risk wasn't what changed my life. The decision to take it did. And now, whenever I face uncertainty, whenever I feel that familiar hesitation, I don't ask myself, is this safe? I ask something better. Will I regret not trying? Because sometimes that question alone is enough to guide you forward. And if there's one thing this journey has taught me, it's this. You don't need a perfect plan to change your life. You just need one moment of courage and the willingness to follow it. So my friend, if you are standing in front of something right now, something small, something uncertain, and a part of you is quietly asking, should I try? I want you to pause for a moment, not to overthink, not to analyze every possible outcome, but to listen. Because deep down, you already know what that moment means. It may not look important. It may not feel like the right time. It may not even make sense to anyone else. But sometimes, those are the moments that matter the most. The ones that don't come with guarantees. The ones that don't promise success. Only possibility. And I know it's not easy. Taking a risk, no matter how small, will always come with fear. But staying the same has a cost too. A quiet cost, a slow cost, the kind that builds over time, until one day you look back and wonder, what if I had tried? You don't need to change everything today. You don't need to be fearless. You don't need to be ready. You just need to be willing to take one small step, because that's how it begins. Not with confidence, not with certainty, but with a choice. And maybe that choice is right in front of you now. So whatever it is, don't rush it. Don't ignore it. Just don't walk away too quickly. And if this story stayed with you, if even a small part of it felt real to you, then maybe this is your moment too. And before you go, if you want more stories like this, slow, honest, and real, stories that remind you of what's possible, take a second to subscribe to the channel. Not because you have to, but because sometimes a simple story at the right moment can change the way you see your life. And maybe the next one will be the one you need to hear. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next story.